Being a woman in ag means empowerment for me. And it's not just for me, it's also empowerment for the next generation. And it is also making our ancestors proud. Like, all of us need to understand that when I say there were farmers in our lineage, the farmers were women.
Welcome to the FarmHouse. I'm Candace Wierzbowski.
And I'm Stephanie Spiker.
And you just heard Christa Barfield. Christa is the founder of FarmerJawn, a southeastern Pennsylvania area organization that happens to be the largest Black woman-owned organic produce farm in America. But it's also much more than that, and we'll let Christa explain why in a minute. But before we dive into that, let's pause for a moment and talk about the word Jawn. That's Jawn. Steph, for anyone listening from outside of southeastern Pennsylvania, what exactly is a Jawn?
Yeah, so Jawn is very much a Philly thing, and basically it's just another word for person, place, or thing. You basically can use Jawn in place of any noun, and sometimes it's just used for emphasis or, just it's a Philly thing. But yeah, basically it's a noun for those of you who are not Philly people.
If you've ever seen the movie Creed, they have a moment in there where they talk about the word, so check it out, I guess. But for now, let's hear from Christa and learn more about FarmerJawn and how she and others like her are working to promote healthy, fresh food in urban areas. Christa, welcome to the FarmHouse. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So we're going to start off with the same question we lead off all of our interviews with, and that is, did you always want to work in agriculture?
Such a great question, especially for me, because my journey and path to agriculture was so very different. I worked in healthcare first for 10 years, always had a love for passion and a passion for life sciences and medicine and health, and did that first and then transitioned into agriculture. But it first took me traveling out of the country about 3,000 miles away to then realized my passion for farming and then to come bring it back to my hometown.
Nice. So tell us about FarmerJawn. What is it and why is the work that you're doing so important?
Yeah, 6 years ago, when I traveled to a country called Martinique, it's a Francophone country, and it has a very interesting makeup, super diverse in multiple ways. And I saw how they had a very agrarian lifestyle. They cared about their food. They were very connected to it. And then I did more research and I realized that a lot of other countries that weren't as westernized as, America that's what they do. They eat what they grow.
Mm-hmm.
And they're inherently healthier because of that. And I wanted to bring that home. And so really when I started FarmerJawn, officially 4 years ago, but on that trip 6 years ago in 2018, I got the realization over time after doing this for a few years that this was really going to be a reincarnation of my healthcare career because of all the health disparities in our communities where food is scarce and food lacks nutrition. And that is what I wanted to see changed and impacted. And there was no Black or brown ownership when it really came to our food systems in the Philadelphia region. And then I started to look at that across the nation and I started to see how it's lacking everywhere. And and that's also why our health disparities as Black people are so high. And quite frankly, we're the unhealthiest population in the nation. So that's what I saw that needed to be changed. And I just started doing the work to make it happen.
So what's FarmerJawn doing right now to address those disparities and those issues?
Really, it's increasing the number of Black and brown farmers that exist. It's scaling our own systems, from 2020, when I first started, like actually putting hands to soil consistently as a business, that I was doing that in a 24 square foot greenhouse in my small, tiny backyard in Germantown, Philadelphia. And now, we've scaled the business to 128 acres across 3 counties in PA. So I'm really focused on becoming a sustainable and profitable business that is here to stay, that has longevity, so that we can also train other people when we're training them how to farm. We also want to train them how to be business owners. We want to train
Mhm.
them how to pursue generational wealth, because if we do that as a people, then not only will we, be able to have that, what our counterparts have always had, from the days of colonization, but we'll also be able to be healthier people, and that impacts everyone, not just black, white, brown, whomever. Creating healthier food systems impacts everyone. And because we focus on growing organically and regeneratively, we're thinking about people and planet. So yeah, I really love how Farmer John's approach is taking care of everybody.
Yeah, I love that holistic approach because, like you said, like it doesn't matter. It's going to benefit everyone. There is no loser here. It's really just like win 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 across the board.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned it right now you're farming 128 acres, which is it's pretty substantial. That's a lot of acreage, but obviously as you said, you didn't start out, that large scale. So, how were you able to grow your farm to be as large and productive as it is now?
Yeah, it really began with stewardship. It just my mindset around stewardship of land. Farmer John doesn't own any piece of property. And so it really came down to, we care more about what is happening with the soil, because we understand that healthy soil means healthy plants, means healthy people. And that is, I learned that from Rodale, from working side by side with them, becoming ambassador with them, and just understanding that how it connected directly back to what I love, which is medicine. And so I realized that regenerative healthcare means food is medicine. And so I really understand that as we scale to this, focusing on the land, it was about stewarding the land first and then creating production second, like having more areas that are productive. So while we have 128 acres of land under my purview, we're farming a small portion of that because we have to get the soil healthy first. We're working with
Hmm.
land that had been sprayed with Roundup and all other types of chemicals for decades upon decades upon decades. And so from that conventional farming mentality, here we come, here to heal. And I truly believe, and I say this all the time, to heal a nation is to feed them well. And feeding them well means caring about how the food is grown in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had looked over your website before we had this little chat, this interview here, and on it it talks about the five main areas that Farmer John focuses on, which is production, access, education, awareness, and lifestyle. So can you just kind of tell us a little bit about why all five of those areas are so, important as a key focus?
Yeah, I mean, it really all it connects. It's about how we build a food system that makes sense for people, that a food system that people can actually be participate in, because that's the biggest issue. So production is first and foremost, is how we produce, why, understanding our why about why we go about things regeneratively and organically, and making sure that the food that we grow, people can actually get it. We have to make farming convenient, is what I like to say. Coming from an urban city, and now having farmland that's 45 minutes from the city, and then some that's like 2 minutes outside the city, and growing spaces that's directly in the city, all those components matter. It really does all connect, because we need to make sure that farming is convenient for everybody. And we are, especially as Black people, focusing on removing the the inability for people to get to things that make them healthy. Convenient things these days are, we love corner stores, right? They're a hugely a cornerstone of our community. But most of the stuff that's convenient is unhealthy. So I really do focus on um, making sure that all the aspects connect, and that the life, so that this can truly be a lifestyle for people. Education, understanding how we go about doing this so that we can have more farmers, because that's also a super necessity. The average age of a farmer is creeping and creeping. It was 50, 57 and a half at one point, and
It's
increasing
getting
up
up
into
there.
yeah, it's getting up there into the 60s. So, people have to retire at some point. They have to rest their body. The kids aren't wanting to go into farming. They're wanting to move into the big city. So, we really have to make sure that we are training up the next generation of farmers, and that we all understand what's important, how we produce, who needs to have access to it, the education so that we can continue pushing out regenerative organic farmers, and then obviously that piece of making this a true lifestyle for everybody. Literally thinking about what I saw in Martinique, like farming and food, that was the lifestyle. They were healthier people, they were more active people, and
Hmm.
they aged better than we do overall. And so that's what I want to see for our people here in our community, in our nation, and it's starting here in Philadelphia.
Yeah, that well said. So one of the biggest issues in farming right now is access to land because if you don't have land, it makes it a lot harder to farm. And of course, that is just exponentially harder when you're dealing with an urban area. So, what are some things happening with urban farming right now that you find interesting or exciting, or how are people, adapting to the fact that there is lesser land? How are they getting around that?
Yeah, people are getting creative. I won't say that there's less land because there's so much land. There's land all
Mm,
over the place. It's just about
Mhm.
who owns it and what they're
Very
willing to
true.
do with it, what they're willing to allow others to do with it, how much they want to charge for it. Like it really becomes an access issue and less of a availability issue. So, um, what I love about urban farming and farming in smaller spaces, and what I think we can do better with all of that is literally thinking about these food forest concepts where we say, people say they want a food forest and they create these spaces that are, or community gardens that allow, so a few people to come and put their hands in soil and like have food for their households. But that's not a result or a solution for the masses. Like if you have something on a corner every within that can service a 4 block radius, 5 block radius, people can just walk up and get produce. That's what I see being like really impactful. So while the nation is like bustling with community gardens where you have like a few people who are able to rent these boxes, that's all well and good, but I see much bigger promise for what we do with these corner spaces for that aren't taken up by developers, because there's a lot of great organizations that care about people and planet that are getting land, like these trusts that exist that are holding on to land and buying properties so that the community can use it. And so that's what I'm seeing. And what I like the next step beyond that to be is the community actually understanding their responsibility when it comes to having these properties. And it goes beyond the typical use of a community garden. And they could have so much more impact if we looked at them as businesses really and fed people
hmm
as a business. And even if the city, like, the city is a business, right? Like I think people who always, they forget that too. Like nonprofits are businesses. Like all of this is, people need to understand how to run a business. It doesn't have to be extractive because it's a business. It can be people that are doing business for good and feeding people, utilizing the land that we have, the land that was already invested in, and the land that we can recuperate and regenerate to be healthy and put out healthy food. So some of that gives you a little bit of what we're already doing and how we can improve it for the better.
Cool. What are some common hurdles that, maybe keep people in urban areas or food deserts from growing their own food, and what do you think can be done to overcome them?
Yeah, one of the biggest things is just education. A lot of people that live in urban communities never even thought that they would put their hands in soil, for the
Mhm.
large majority of them. Then you have that other subsect of people who grew up farming forever, and or grew up in a farming neighborhood or community, and then they move to the city and want nothing to do with it ever again.
Mhm.
So
They're done.
those are your main groups that you find, and I want to just really get people excited about the fact that you can do it and you can do it in smaller spaces. And at the end of the day, honestly, like everybody's not going to be a farmer. And that's why I named my company Farmer Jawn. Farmer Jawn, Jawn is a Philly word, it means person, place, or thing, JAWN. And it was a love story first to my city, to that anybody can farm, because people that look like me typically aren't the farmers. And in a world where 95% of farmers are white males, I don't necessarily fit the mold. And I'm reminded of that quite often. But I
Mhm.
still persevere and push through, and I am an example to others that they can persevere and push through, whether they want to be a business owner and do this, or whether they want to do it, for just for their homes or for their households. And get us away from the idea of the hobby mindset around gardening and farming, because that's what is prevalent all throughout our country, especially after COVID. Like everybody wants to garden, right? But if we look at it as like a part of our lifestyle, back to that key word, we are agrarian people. We come from agrarian people, all of us, regardless of your lineage. You have people in your background, no matter what color you are, that were farmers, that were dependent on their neighborhood farmer to get their food and resources from. So we just need to get back to that. So if you don't want to be a farmer, that's perfectly fine. But Farmer Jawn is about people understanding that if you don't farm, at least you know who your farmer is, because that really is a basic human right that we need to just get back to.
Yeah. So, you actually sort of already started touching on, I think, a little bit of this when you talked about the corner store and how, it's not like a lot of healthy options available there. But I know you have something that's coming hopefully this summer, maybe called the Corner Jawn.
Mhm.
And I would love to know more about that. I am kind of fascinated by it. I think it's such a great idea. So please tell us more about what Corner Jawn is and what inspired the idea.
Yeah, growing up, I grew up in inner city Philadelphia. Corner store is that's a staple. Like it's right down the street. I can easily go there. I can grab eggs, if I wanted to. And they sold them by the half carton, which like I had never seen in any other major store until recently. But growing up, you would go there and get, something quick to eat if you wanted to. They had a grill in the back and we're doing burgers and wings and French fries. And then they had like the grits and they had the bacon and they had like the kind of stuff that a household would need real quick to if you wanted to put a meal together. Mostly all processed, mostly all high sodium, nothing really super healthy at all. And when I decided, like when I was in this space in 2020, and I was like, all right, let me see what corner stores will be willing to do. So in my own neighborhood in Germantown, Philadelphia, I walked around, went to 5 different corner stores and asked for each of their management, talked to them and said like, "Hey, would you carry fresh produce here?" And many of them were very, very hesitant. And it came down to them not wanting to sell it because they didn't think it would sell. So it would
Mm.
die on their shelf. So from a business perspective, that made perfect sense to me. I understood it. So I understood that the main issue really is not the storekeepers. It's mainly the psyche of the people that need to purchase. It's the customer psyche. And that's what we need to impact and make change for. And we need to make people understand what they should be putting into their bodies and then give them access to it. And there's just the power of influence is so great. We see that in mainstream media every single day and in the way that we shop as consumers ourselves. Like good branding can get a person every time. Like I love a bright colored bottle, you know?
Yeah.
So just thinking about how things and even just the traditions of food, like just thinking about all of that and how we can shape a store that keeps to the tradition of the corner store, that keeps to the convenience of the corner store, but also is infusing the food as medicine concept into that. And that's what Corner Jawn is. It really does focus in on how the choices that we make have there's science behind them and how when you walk into the store, the whole idea is that immediately you get what the what nutrition facts actually mean. What does these words actually stand for? What is a carbohydrate? Like I think about the fact that I went to a relatively great school, but there are a number of people and from my same community, houses next door that didn't have that same opportunity of going to a private school like I did. So I really understand that growing up in the inner city and being from a marginalized, disenfranchised community, I have friends from all walks of life. So
Hmm.
they deserve the same level of care, level of nutrition, level of access to good healthy food as I do. And that's what I'm giving them. So the lovely thing about how we're building out Corner Jawn is that they're in communities that are super diverse with all different types of people. Our very first one is going into literally the most unhealthiest section of the city of Philadelphia, which is also one of the most gentrified sections of the city of Philadelphia at the same
Mm.
time. So in
Interesting.
Kensington, yes. So in Kensington, there is a lot going on. It's always in the news. A lot of reformation taking place from our Sherelle Parker, our mayor, and her administration. So there's a lot happening that we get to be a part of that story, the story of changing it for the better, while also not making sure that we're also being super inclusive of the people that are from that community, that are that have made that community home and that are struggling. We are a beacon of hope. My hope is to bring everybody together and create this, Switzerland, if you will, where no matter what walk of life you come from, you still deserve good, delicious food, and we have it for you.
Yeah, that's so exciting. I I've been saying to Candace, like I'm hoping to like come down for whenever your grand opening is for the paper and cover it, because I'm just so excited about that concept. So do you know, I know the last I saw it was like summer. So do you have like a general
Summer.
idea? Summer? Okay.
It's
That's
still
fine.
summer. Yeah. And so I'm pretty much just like slapping this general, it's still summer, because this has been a long time coming. It's so funny because this is definitely a story like for business owners in general, or even just a life lesson. Like you have plans for things and they're like coming and pushing, and then like something happens and then it's not when you thought it was going to be, but it's always when it's supposed to be.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
while I have so many delays have taken place, like construction issues, our financing, all the stuff, like we're now in the like home stretch, and I truly believe it's happening exactly when it was supposed to. So yeah, there's a
Yeah.
beauty in that.
That's exciting. I mean, it's definitely a story that as a reporter, I was like, "Oh, I can't wait to get the announcement of a grand opening because I'll definitely be there." That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Also,
It's
can't
exciting
wait.
as a consumer too, because I mean, who among us isn't guilty of going into like a corner store or like a quick stop and going for a snack? And, I've seen apples and oranges and bananas sitting there. And do I ever buy them? No,
Right.
I always go and get something junky and like a soda. And that is a mindset that definitely could use some adjusting.
Yeah. But that also those things that we love, like what if there's a healthier version of that, right? Like those
Right.
sodas
Hmm.
and like those
Yeah.
snacks that are there, like they do exist. Like there's a number of really dope CPG companies, consumer packaged good companies that are out here that do care about people and planet, you know? And so
Mm-hmm.
my goal is to start with all the local stuff first and then definitely focus on other people who care about regeneration and organic and pack that in as well. And then we'll be doing our own soup, salads, and sandwiches at the store as well. Everything will be grab and go for in the beginning as we get our legs up under us. But ultimately, in the future, I definitely have some big ideas around like a full service kitchen.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
that is exciting.
I do love a grab and go salad. That would be
Mhm.
something that I would be like, okay, I will take that.
Yes. So you've touched on this a couple times, as we've been talking about education, and I know you offer school programs for students of basically all ages, elementary school up through college,
Yeah.
basically to bridge that gap between agriculture and the younger generation. Because as we talked about, the age of a farmer is getting much older. So, obviously a lot of people are pretty far removed from a farm. I think the average is people are 3 generations removed from the farm. Um, so how can you as a farmer, like how can you help bridge that gap? Like how are you guys, focusing on that gap?
Yeah, so it's the world of innovation. It's an integration of being on site and also technology. Like we've been doing a lot of work with these new, I don't know if you've seen people walking around with these Apple Pro Visions on their face.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so we've been really doing some beta testing of how we can start to integrate this in for our education that's in classroom. Because we get so many people that are excited to come out to the farm, and then we also get people that want us to come in and speak to them. But getting people to the farm is a lot easier than, me trying to split myself 50 ways to go visit schools.
Yeah.
And so we're thinking about ways that we can literally be in a classroom, but with the help of technology, where we can take them on a journey through the farm, and even if it's a follow-up visit. So we're playing around with that and in conversations with Apple and just talking about what we can do. And so that's a super new development. But what we have been doing and pretty consistently is welcoming farmers. Well, I call them farmers, but they're students.
Future farmers.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, future farmers, but welcoming them onto our properties and allowing them to put their hands in soil, educating them about different crops, leaf identification, understanding what things are based on the shape of the leaves, the smell of things, and even giving them things to taste as they walk. So it's really an immersive experience for them that people that the kids really love. And that's why I really want to be able to do some follow up, because I do remember visiting farms as a child. Like I remember
Mhm.
going to visit a farm and it was never talked, we never talked about plants. We never and ever. Like I remember going to visit a farm and we talked about Wilbur, like Pennsylvania's largest pig.
Yep.
And and I remember bobbing for apples and like I remember that's the stuff I recall, and like candy corn. Like I never discussed where does the tomato come from, like ever.
Hmm.
So we are making sure that these farm visits, which are so popular and have been popular for decades, are now more focused on workforce development even at this young age, because it matters. And then we take that from however small they are, kindergartners, some pre-K as well, and we do that all the way up to college, and we just make it more age appropriate as we go, really focusing on, as we get older, what do you want to do for a living, and like let's talk about it so I can help you integrate what your passions are that you've already developed and what you're good at, and let me show you how agriculture can be a part of that, because ag is so much bigger than just hands and soil. There's marketing, there's journalists, right? Like
Yep.
so branding, like the list really goes on. And so farming is it's bigger than just there's so many allied careers with that we want to show people how to really make a career out of it.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a good point. I do think, you know, people hear the term like agriculture or farming and they just automatically think of the farmer. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's so much around that goes into the industry that's more than just, yeah, the hands in the soil, which obviously is such a vital part. But, there's a lot of other things going on, and you can use your skills and passion for lots of things related to ag, which is exciting, hopefully, for young people.
Yeah, and so if we take that approach more, we'll be able to really beef up the ag industry with a more diverse approach. Really, that's really what I'm focusing on. Is like we go into the inner city, you got everybody in there. Like Philadelphia specifically is almost 50% Black, and so you have another 50% that's a mix of diversity. And so if we're going into multiple schools through our region, we are literally hitting everybody, and people are making decisions whether they're going to be farmers, but they're excited about being a farmer. And then they're also making decisions if they want to come in within an agriculture company. So yeah, you're
Hmm.
absolutely right.
Great. So we've heard from several women that, when they're in ag spaces, they often feel like they're the minority in the room. And they're not wrong, given that the 2022 ag census found that women account for about 36% of ag producers. But they also say how important it is that even if they're in the minority, they still need to be there and they need to be visible. And they want to be recognized as having a rightful place at that table. And as a Black woman, does it ever feel like there's extra pressure to justify your rightful place at the table or to make sure that you're visible for others?
Definitely all of the above. So yes, women in general, we are definitely like, I feel like we're scraping for our spot because I saw
Mm-hmm.
the
Hmm.
same census. And along with that, there is, I think that came out to maybe, it was like 20,000 female farmers. I think that broke down to, if I'm not mistaken. It might be more than that. I might be skewing the numbers to Black women, but I think there were definitely like a ton less female farmers. No, wait, is it like 1.2? Do you have the number?
Yeah, I
I don't have it in
think
front of me,
I don't
but
have it in front of me. I'm pretty
I can
sure
look it up.
in
1.2
general,
million or something like
yeah,
that.
I think it's about a little over a million. I wrote
Yes.
an article about this and yet I don't remember the number, but I think it's a little over a million.
No, you're right. It just came back to me. So it's like 1.2 million women farmers and then 20,000 Black women farmers. But when I was digging deeper into all of those numbers, I found like there is still a difference between operators, owners, like all of
Hmm.
that still is. You get deeper into there and the numbers start to dwindle even more. Even ones
Mm-hmm.
there, even some statistics around all women led farms, ones that are really just like the leadership is women. There is no, it's not like a husband wife team. Like there's just so much detail that goes into this, but women are always fighting for our voices to be heard and to be considered an authority on the matter. And that's something that I deal with all the time. especially being in a community like the one that I am in, 45 minutes from Philadelphia. In Philadelphia, I don't have to worry about that at all. I walk onto a property, everybody's like, yep, she could tell us this, this, and this. And like they have complete confidence in it. But you go 45 minutes away and then I'm being questioned. So it's very interesting. It truly is. When what the community considers to be a farmer is white and it's a male. That's just
Yeah.
really what we're dealing with. And so I love to see female farmers that are just doing their thing and, standing in your own truth, that you have spent your 10,000 hours and more, doing this work, so you can entrust that what we're saying is correct.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things that really stood out to me when I was looking at your website was the phrase agriculture is the culture. And I feel like I saw that on so many different pages on your site. So, could you explain, what does that mean to you? Because I just think it's such a cool phrase.
Yeah, I touched on it a little bit when I was saying that farming shows up in everybody's lineage. Like agriculture is a part of all of our backgrounds, and that's like so important for me. So to bring that into the forefront of like today, right? We're in 2024, and I think about how people don't even understand that agriculture is responsible for not only what you eat, also for what you're drinking, even just the regular water you're drinking. Like if agriculture
Hmm.
is not done well, you will not have good water. But even all the other beverages that you love, the scotch, the whiskey, like the list goes on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Then, and then also the houses that you live in and the clothes that you're wearing.
Yeah.
Like a farmer is responsible for all of that somewhere. And farmers always like, I feel like lay people always think of ag like mainly food and like cornfields. That's what people think about agriculture. Maybe some
Yeah.
animals too, right? Like old MacDonald had a farm. We grew up with that song. So like that's now ingrained in our minds. But we're not thinking about everything else that agriculture is responsible for: agroforestry, the cabinetry in our homes, the kitchen table that we're even eating on, right?
Hmm.
A farmer is responsible for it. The clothing, like the cotton, like so many
Mhm.
people don't even understand the story of cotton as it pertains to America, but it even goes beyond that. Like a lot of our cotton is not even that for our clothes is not even American cotton. So
Hmm.
there's so many details where I just really agriculture is the culture is a reminder to folks that you could not operate in your daily lives without a farmer, and you should thank a farmer every single day.
Yeah. I love that. I feel like I always see bumper stickers that say like, "Did you eat today? Thank a farmer," or something like that, and they always make me smile.
Right.
Like just a little reminder, like,
Yeah.
hey, like there's these people that are doing this work, and you would not be where you are right now without them.
You'd
Yeah.
be naked, hungry, and cranky.
Naked,
Yeah,
hungry.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So, what are some common misconceptions about urban farming? What should more people know about urban farming? Speaking of not taking your farmers for granted.
Yeah, so I would definitely, it comes back to the hobby mentality that people place on urban farming. And that's also just because there's a lack of education in the space and lack of courage. That also something that we're working on. I want people to strategically quit their jobs. um, if they would like to, I get so many people that are super passionate about agriculture and like, oh, I really want to do this. Like I'm inspired by you and I want to do this. Right. And I'm like, okay, like let's talk about it. That's what the Agripreneur Academy is all about. Like for folks that really want to take these next steps into becoming an agripreneur. And I go back to like telling people, tell me what your passions are, tell me what you love, and I'll help you build out what your business is going to be, as it intersects with ag. And yeah, I really want people to get courage around treating agriculture in urban spaces as a real business, because that's the only way it's going to scale. Things that make money is what scales. Things that make money is what our government pays attention to, because that's what pays taxes. Like all of this stuff matters, right? And we just have to be realistic and understand that like feeding people is important, but until we get serious about really having like your neighborhood farmer needs to be a real thing. Like I would love to see our cities, metropolitans all across the nation, invest in neighborhood farmers where we have these spots that used to be community gardens, but no, these are like now productive spaces where food is being grown and can feed, 2 to 5 block radiuses, depending on the size of it, because everybody has their own neighborhood farmer. Like, to me, that's how we should be investing our money. So we can stop relying so heavily, which we always will have to, but so heavily on large mass distribution of food that is moving on big trucks all across the nation.
Yeah. So that actually brings us to the very last question, which we ask everyone the same question at the end. And that is, what does being a woman in ag mean to you?
Yes. Being a woman in ag means empowerment for me. And it's not just for me, it's also empowerment for the next generation. And it is also making our ancestors proud. Like, all of us need to understand that when I say there were farmers in our lineage, the farmers were women. Like,
Mhm.
the farmers in our lineages, all of ours, were women. They are the traditional farmers. And so this is, men showed up on the scene a little bit later. They were kind of the helpmates. They were kind of the helpmates to, to the women when it came to agriculture. So this is really us taking back our rightful place in history and moving forward and pushing forward towards what our destiny truly is. And that's for us to reframe our food system. Women, we are naturally more delicate. We are naturally more nurturing individuals. And so our food system needs some nurturing, and we are here to make that happen.
I love that. What a good answer.
Yeah, great one to end on.
Yeah, that is perfect way to end it. So, Christa, thank you so, so much for joining us at the farmhouse today. It was great to have you.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
It was so great talking with Christa. I loved getting to know more about Farmer Jawn and the new corner Jawns, and hopefully you all at this point understand the word Jawn. But, I think the one thing that we've talked about just in the office is the phrase agriculture is the culture. And I love how she just said, it doesn't really matter who you are. Like, at some point in your lineage, there is agriculture. And for me, like, I didn't grow up on a farm, and neither did you, but
Nope.
My sister is currently a farmer. So my dad always kind of laughs, like, both his kids ended up working in agriculture, even though, we didn't grow up in agriculture. But my dad's family, that background is farming. My grandparents farmed, all of my great aunts and uncles farmed, and it is part of my culture, a huge part of my culture. And even though I didn't grow up farming, both my sister and I kind of made our way back into agriculture, which I think has just always tickled my dad. He loves to see it because he grew up working on his uncle's farm. So
Yeah, it's a great story for your family too.
yeah.
I don't really have anyone in my family who works in agriculture. But nevertheless, as Christa was saying, it still touches almost every aspect of my life. I've joked that, from the time I wake up in the morning with my young kids until the time I go to bed at night, I'm thinking about farming because, I have an almost 2-year-old, and we wake up and we play with his little Fisher-Price farm, and we sing Old MacDonald Has a Farm, and then I come to work and I think about farming some more. And then I go home and I read, farming related books to my kids as well. And that's my whole day. But, looking beyond that, it's also my whole day because I eat throughout my day, and I am clothed, and I live in my house. And so agriculture is part of that as well. But it also makes me think, my kids are so interested in farming, as I think most kids are. I mean, I think almost every kid at some point has owned or played with a little play farm set, and everyone loves Old MacDonald, and, people love the story of Charlotte's Web. And yet, for so many people at some point in their lives, they seem to turn away from agriculture or farming, and it doesn't interest them as much anymore. And I hope that's something that we're able to change, because there should not be that turning away. People should continue to be interested. You may not want to be a farmer, but you should still be thinking about agriculture and appreciating the work that goes into farming and getting us, all these things that we need in our lives.
Yeah. I mean, there tends to be such a disconnect, and I don't really know where that happens, because as you say, like, as kids, you want to play with toy cows and toy tractors, and I don't know where the disconnect kind of starts, but hopefully with people like Christa, and maybe even with this podcast, we can kind of close that gap a little more and help people see that agriculture is the culture. It touches every aspect of your life. So I don't know. I found Christa empowering. She said that being a woman in ag is empowering, and I felt like empowered just having that conversation with her. So my hope is that all of you feel empowered listening to this episode.
I know I certainly did. Yeah, she was very inspiring and just excellent to talk to.
Yeah. So I think that wraps it up for us today at the farmhouse. If you enjoyed this, you can always give us a nice rating or a review on whatever platform you're listening on, or maybe even subscribe if you would like to.
Yeah, and if you'd like to reach out to us, you can email us at farmhouse@lancasterfarming.com. We're also on social media.
Yes, we are. We are on Instagram and TikTok as @Lancaster Farming. We are also on Facebook as Lancaster Farming. Give us a follow if you're not following us.
All right, and I think that wraps it up for us. I'm Candace.
I'm Stephanie.
And thank you for joining us at the farmhouse.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
This episode of The Farmhouse is copyright 2024 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, part of the Steinman Communications family.
It was written by Stephanie Spiker and Candace Wierzbowski. It was produced by Eric Herlock and Matt Lee. The music you've heard throughout the show is courtesy of Tin Bird Shadow.